I hate adjusting my clutch. I really do. Will fat baggers save me? Stay tuned. Like I said in the intro, I hate adjusting my clutch. If you saw my series of the 35,000 mile service, the last one I did and the one that I dread the most is adjusting the clutch. Down at the primary, it's not a big deal, but the adjuster that Harley-Davidson has for modern big twins, the Rushmore engines with the spring-loaded pop-out little plastic thing, just gives me all kinds of grief. Fat Baggers has a solution. They replace the plastic parts with metal, and it's more traditional with a threaded expansion section and a lock collar. So we're going to install it. Maybe this will make clutch adjustment that much easier for me. Let me reposition the camera. We'll get started. All right, if you remember from the clutch adjustment video, there's this plastic tube held on by a couple of clips. That inside is the adjuster. So there's the tube right there. There's the upper grommet. There's the lower clip. I'm going to go ahead and remove those, slide the tube up. If you want to see how this is done, you can watch the other video. I'll put a link in the description. But I'm going to get this all out of the way, expose the adjuster, and then we'll get started. As you can see, I have slid the tube up out of the way. I pulled the, let me show you, the $11 plastic holder or adjuster out, so it exposes the threaded section on the adjuster. Here is what the parts from the Fat Baggers looks like. So there's three pieces. So there's the one, that's the upper, and that will go up about where the spring is. And then the lower, which has an O-ring, and that will go down into the yellow adjuster. So if you can see, there's an O-ring at the bottom, so that has to come off when we do this. And then the lock collar, it's like a lock nut or a jam nut. Pretty straightforward, but all of these are small enough to fit underneath that tube. So what you do is and it comes already put together. I took it apart to show you the different pieces. But what you do is you thread on the lock collar in the lower portion, and you run them all the way up. So in this case, I'll run them all the way up like this. And this is what it looks like just before going in. So what I'll do is I'll line up the slot, there we go, just like that, and it goes over the cable once I get this all apart. Also, the plastic piece right here has to be removed. What they say to do is to use a pair of diagonal cutters, wire cutters, to cut it away. So I have a pair of diagonal cutters right here, and I'll start hacking away at this. That's the way they say to do it. So just cut it into pieces as you go. I don't know of any other easier way. I'm gonna pull the spring out of the way, but yeah, this is just going to be time-consuming process of cutting it away. There we go. One side. I have to cut the lower portion. I don't know. It doesn't seem very easy, but they say to be very careful to not damage the cable. So I'm going to pause the camera, move it out of my way so I can get this thing cut apart. All right, there we are with the plastic part removed. Now it says to thread the spring off the cable. So I'm going to get a small screwdriver, separate that, and spin it on. All right, so pardon my hand here, but what we're going to do is find where that end of the spring is, right there. I'm going to open it up and thread it around the cable. Spin this off. Now, now we just spin it the rest of the way off. What we want to do is we want to get down to just the original threaded portion. One thing the Fat Baggers instruction doesn't explain that I've figured out since is you have to disconnect the rest of the cable. And the way you do that is here inside this window. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the keepers. There it is right there. That's the transmission end. Position the camera a little bit better. There we go. So that's the transmission end. And then up here is the clutch cable end, but you can't easily get to it. You can sort of see it there. Point with a little tiny screwdriver here is I have to remove this button right there from that collar. A little spring piece, little brass spring piece right there that you have to push up out of the way. People use forceps. I've seen this done with forceps, using those pliers. But that piece that I just moved there, boy, this is really hard to do with this pod in the way. So you have to pull that up out of there and then pop this out. It's going to take me 2 hands to do it. Then you can follow the instructions that come with fat baggers. So they don't talk about this part, and you just kind of have to muddle through it. So I'm going to muddle through and show you what it looks like when it's apart. All right, I got it apart. It was easier than I thought. So I'm going to show you here, so I don't have to put it back together. But if you look, there's a button right there. I was trying to pull the button out of this little spot right there from the front. But it has, if you can see through it, a little window. So if you turn it around, there's a window there. So all you really need to do is release the slack and take a little screwdriver. So I have my little screwdriver here and just push the button out, and then it comes right apart. So much easier than I anticipated to get apart. So now that we've got this apart, let's go ahead and install the fat baggers adjuster. So I put it all back together. I showed you that. So all the cables and everything are lined up. There's this O-ring at the bottom, and I think if it didn't have this O-ring, you wouldn't have to take it this far apart, but it has the O-ring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the O-ring off, which is pretty straightforward. Just get a screwdriver in there and pop the O-ring all the way around. So there's the O-ring, right? I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to put this on. Hopefully I can put it on in one piece. If not, I can put it on in multiple pieces. But pull the slack out, line that up. There we go. Much, much easier than I anticipated. All right, let's put the O-ring on. So the O-ring has to stretch over this part, and this is why you have to take it all apart. In order to use this O-ring, you can't do that, obviously, when this is all connected to the main cable. And then up to the top here. I'm just going to stretch that around. Now, Fat Bagger said leave this fully adjusted in while you put it back together. It goes together pretty easy. So there's this ramp. You can see it right there. That ramp that the button down there rides up on and then snaps up in place. Let's put that in. And there you go. As they say, Bob's your uncle. There you go. So there's that little brass piece that I pointed out earlier. I'm going to bend that back down so it holds the button in when there's slack. Now, all you do is you adjust this upper piece. I guess the yellow plastic thing can spin all at once, because what you're doing is you're doing a traditional clutch cable adjustment. So this right here is the amount of adjustment, and then the lock comes down, and that's all there is to it. So I'm going to get the final adjustment set where I like it. This will give me a little bit better clutch control. Yeah, there's a better view of it. So yeah, you thread this lower piece down, get it where you want it, make sure everything is seated properly. That O-ring goes down into the upper portion of the plastic. So boy, that got rid of that goofy spring arrangement with the $11 red plastic clip. So there you go. That's how you install it. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and adjust my clutch free play to where it should be, and then I'll show you what it looks like with the sleeve down. One other thing I want to point out, so if you look, here is the lock collar and the main body. There's flats on it for locking them together. As you can see, I already have mine together. It is a 15 millimeter or 5/8. So I use a 15 millimeter on one, 5/8 on the other, and locked it in place. Another thing I want to show you, and the reason I brought this out is, if you remember earlier, I was complaining about how hard it was to put that tube on and off. It's because the spring that's underneath for the original adjuster drags on the tube. Now that that spring is gone, in this case, once you get things lined up, look at that. It just goes on super easy. And then the rubber grommet piece slides down. Grab it from up above. And as we talked about in the original clutch adjustment video, there's 3 clips, upper, lower, and the middle. In this case, the middle, I still don't know what the heck it does, but I'll put it back on. So yeah, the rubber grommet goes on the top, and then we'll put the 3 clips in. Before I do the conclusion of this video, one thing I do want to point out is that Fatbaggers talks about how to adjust the clutch in their instructions. So they're missing the whole part about taking the upper and lower part of the cable apart, but they do a good job of explaining how to make sure your clutch is properly adjusted at the primary with regards to how the cable's oriented. If you don't do that, what will happen is it'll look like your cable has stretched and that there's not enough adjustment in the adjuster. So make sure you read that portion of the instructions, follow it to the T, you'll have no problems. All right, let's go over the tools and what you needed to do, and then we'll wrap up. So there you have it. Pretty straightforward, easier than I thought it would be. Didn't take me very long to do it. In fact, repositioning and turning on and off the camera probably took longer. You have leftover parts, right? The spring, the $11 red piece, and this plastic adjuster body that had to be torn apart. Tools, 15mm 5/8 to tighten it, plastic trim tool to remove the lower retention bracket, side cutters to hack away at the plastic thing, and then 2 different screwdrivers, this screwdriver to spread the spring apart, and this one to push the little button out of the retainer. Fatbaggers did a pretty good job with this design. The only thing I wish they would do is in the instructions explain how to take the upper and lower cable apart from each other. I figured it out. It's not rocket science, but it needed some more explanation from Fatbaggers. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, give me a thumbs up, like this video. Please subscribe. Always need more subscribers. And hit the bell, you'll be notified of more content. And then always, thanks for watching. Go far with Brett.